Don't go on vacation.
No, I want to go on vacation. I should go on, oh yeah, I should go on vacation, you're right.
Welcome, everyone. Here we go. If you join us with the Pledge of Allegiance to get things started. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I am going to do my best to fill in for Karen, who's not feeling well. But we'll start with introductions. We'll start with Brian.
Brian Belknap, Ward 4.
Lauren McWiggin, Ward 1.
Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Dave Simpson at large.
Connie Brown, Superintendent.
Faith Fontaine at large.
Dan Poisson, Ward 5.
Brian Carrier, Mayor's Representative.
Gabriel Desperado, Student Representative.
Sue Doris, Assistant Superintendent.
Nice to see everyone. And I want to mention that Abigail is getting excused absence. I guess she has a soccer practice or game.
Oh, it's a
Parent-kid soccer
athlete.
game.
Oh, yeah.
We should all be there. Is there any public participation this evening? Anything that this is primarily a budget workshop that Dr. Brown will lead? If there's none, I'd like to welcome Miss Albert, and it's good to see you again, Pat, that they've been invited to, this is your budget cycle, so I'm glad you could both be here, and welcome to the board. Congratulations to you both. With that, Dr. Brown,
Thank
it's
you
all
very
you.
much. Okay, everybody, I'm going to take this off just so that I can project better, and apologies to the folks who are sitting behind me. It always feels a little weird to be sitting back to, but this is the kickoff of the budget season. And when you think about budget, most folks think that it's just a one-time event, and it really isn't. At any point in a budget cycle, you're actually working in 3 budgets. You're working in the year that we're in, and so that's the 21-22 school year, the budget that the board passed last year. You're preparing for next year, which is 22-23, and you're preparing for audit for the budget that just happened. So you're always looking essentially over 3 years. So tonight, one of the things that I want to talk about will be the goals that the school committee set back in July of 2020. You'll hear that a lot from me. Goals are very important. Your budget should reflect your school department goals. The budget development process. We're going to talk a little bit about fixed costs. And one of the things that I will underscore is that we're a people business, and therefore 80% of our costs pertain to people. We're going to talk about the ELHS debt service, because that's a big factor in the upcoming budget. I want to get that on your radar. And then at the end, I'm hoping that you have some discussion about parameters. I think that's pretty important. So moving ahead. So back in July of 2020, the board set pretty ambitious goals. They included raising the graduation rate to 95% for all kids. And they said, we realize, Connie, that that's not going to happen in year 1, so we'll give you a few years to get that done. So you gave me until 2025 to hit that mark. So the next goal that the board set was that they wanted everybody in the Auburn School Department to meet or exceed the state standards. And since this goal was developed, the MEA has been replaced by the NWEA, the NWEA, and so at some point, the board might want to consider updating that. The board set as a goal a fiscally responsible budget that meets the needs of the school department and is supported by the community. They wanted to make sure that there was regular and efficient means of communication, and they wanted to make sure that we have effective teachers in our classrooms. All very reasonable and, I think, as you'll see, attainable. So one of the things that I'd like to highlight tonight is what went well in the budget that we're in. This is the 21-22 school year. These were some of the goals that were achieved. We lowered elementary class sizes. We were able to increase ELHS, that's Edward Little High School, AP offerings. We eliminated multi-grade elementary classrooms. I want to pause there for a minute to underscore why we did that, because it wasn't an arbitrary epiphany I had in the middle of the night. It was going to all of the elementary buildings, looking at their data, talking to administrators, looking specifically at those multi-age classrooms that were not combined because they were sought after by teachers, they were combined for economics, and they were often large. And so, for example, one year a teacher might have a 3-4, and the next year they might have a 4-5, and then they might bounce back and forth. It became really difficult to deliver that curriculum in a way that was consistent from year over year, and it showed up in the data. And we were able to eliminate the multi-age classrooms. We also increased support for social emotional needs. If you have noticed, we have added social workers, we've added guidance counselors, and we have a literacy initiative that we have devoted much of our professional training and implementation for this year. So there were some other highlights, and these are the less tangible, but I think no less important to the school committee. The first is budget transparency. When I came to Auburn, that was a word I heard a lot. We want to make sure that we are transparent. And so there were steps that were added to the budget process last year. In addition to having every budget meeting the school committee held open, we added individual school presentations at all of the buildings. And so I went to the school, I did a short presentation, took questions, and it went over really well. I got great feedback from the faculties about how much they appreciated hearing sort of one-on-one and live and in person, most times, I guess it was some of those were Zooms, what that information looked like. On the website, all the materials are there, and we added another feature last year, and that was at every budget workshop, people have questions. And so we recorded all of those questions, we recorded all of those answers and put them up on the website for people to have a look at. So in the event that if they didn't happen to make that budget workshop, they could go back and refer to it. And it was also a good guide for the school committee because they're thinking, what did they say about fill in the blank? And there it was. We also, and Counselor Carrier gets credit for this, we had a budget message for the first time ever, from what I've been told, and it was an in-depth review of each of the articles and what the budget could be expected for the 21-22 school year. It's comparable to what the city does. He had asked me, can we do that? And I'm like, well, why not? We don't need to write that into the charter. Of course we can do that. And it was a guide that I looked at many times during the year. He was also the individual who said, can we get personnel sheets in front of each article? You know, I want, I call it an at-a-glance piece of paper for everybody in, say, Article 1. Articles are sometimes referred to as cost centers or articles. I'm old school, I call them articles, that's what the statute calls them. In Auburn, they're also called cost centers. So you would hear Mr. Hanson and I toggle back and forth on that. There's some other goals that we managed to do. One, we increased the substitute pay for long-term subs, going from $100 to $218, more than doubled it. So that is an achievement. When people talk about the difficulty of attracting substitutes, you had the forward thinking of, we're going to raise our rates. I wish I could say that we have been in a much better place with subs, but there are no subs. You know, it's a problem that probably is not solved by money at this point in time. But we did, in order to be competitive, we tried to get ahead of that. Another big feature of the budget that we're in is that you fully funded out-of-district placement for special education students. So for those of you who have been through 2 or 3 budget cycles, you may recall that special education out-of-district placements were chronically underfunded. And in your budget workbooks from last year, there were pieces of data that showed how much that underfunding cost. If I had to pick a cost center to underfund, it wouldn't be that one, because inevitably you have kids move in and out. We're a service center, and quite often those kids have special needs, and they end up getting placed, and that line ran in the red, sometimes $500,000, $700,000. So you made the collective policy decision, because you're policy makers, to fully fund out-of-district placements, and it makes a difference. So that line is looking good this year. We also adopted the illustrative math curriculum in grades 6 to 8. And so then I also count these as achievements, because I think passing a budget is a big deal. So first of all, the 21-22 budget had the unanimous support of the Auburn School Committee. And that was after a lot of vigorous debate and discussion, a lot of questions, but it came out unanimously. It then went to the Auburn City Council, and again, we came out with a unanimous support, and I've been told that was a first, if hadn't been in a long, long time. And then we went to the citizens at a BVR, Budget Validation Referendum, and there too, we had demonstrably support for our budget at 555 yeses and 151 noes. It's pretty good odds, just about 80% of the people who came out in support of the school department. So I count those as budget achievements.
Fun fact, my son actually registered to vote so he could vote for the school budget. That was his first vote ever. Kind of anticlimactic, but I was pretty proud.
I hope he's in the 555,
Yes,
Mrs.
yes.
Hart. So let's talk a little bit about process. And at the last school committee meeting, Mr. Belknap had asked a question, would it make sense to actually start this process with the new members? And I think it's a very logical question, and I'm grateful that some of the folks are in the audience tonight. If we had hesitated, if we had not had this workshop tonight, then we would be behind in what I think is a very carefully thought-out, comprehensive budget process. I don't like to leave a lot to chance. And so having dialogue early, often, and making sure that everybody gets the information that they need, because at the end of the day, you folks will vote on that. And so the next step after tonight, this process is December 20. There will be a joint meeting between the Auburn City Council and the school committee regarding the upcoming budget. We are partners with the city in passing a citywide budget. We're a city department. And it's really important to maintain that dialogue. I think that's one of the reasons we started doing this last year, that we had a unanimous vote from the city council. So that is coming up on the 20th. I think last year it was ugly sweater night, so if you're thinking ahead and you want to plan for your ugly sweater, you might get it a little bit ahead of time. So this is the budget process. Most of these are Wednesdays. As a matter of fact, I think they're all Wednesdays. Last year, we were fortunate and we had good weather. We didn't have to deal with snow. So that would be the only change, is if we had to change these for inclement weather. So March 2nd, we're going to kick it off. And by the way, for those of you who are new, you will get a great big budget book. We endeavor to make it as understandable as possible. It's divided into sections or articles or cost centers. You'll have a lot of data, a lot of places for you to ask questions. And one of the first things I do on the 2nd is to go over the contents of that book. I'm a former teacher. My job is to teach you how to use that book so it can help you. So then we go through the articles. Article 1 is regular instruction. Those are all the classrooms, the schools. That night will be the elementary budget presentations. That's something I started last year. I want you to hear from the administrators for what they need in their schools. You don't need to listen to me talk at you all day long. So that was something that we changed. They come and give their budget presentations. AMS will follow, EL, and then after all of the presentations, there's an opportunity for school committee members to discuss, ask questions, and get their questions answered. So then we go to the 9th, 2 hours for special education. This is deliberate. These are the articles that tend to be the richest in terms of discussion. There are a lot of people in special education. We have a lot of programs. We want to make sure that the committee has a clear understanding of the staffing, of the programs, how we provide those services, and what they look like. And again, you'll have committee discussion. So then we go to the 16th, and a shorter window here, but we'll talk about athletics. One of the things, again, that I started last year is I gave you, for our athletics, a cost per student, so you have an idea how much it costs to put a kid on the ice. I think that's important, and that includes everything: transportation, ice time, coaches, whatever the equipment needs are, because I think that's part of the transparency that you folks have asked for, that you want to see how much things cost. We also include all of the stipend information. Article 5 is technology, libraries, PD, curriculum. Article 6 is essentially my office and the school committee. I believe you know, but if you don't, that the stipends for school committee members are going up. They're going to $1,800 this year, and then $4,000 in 23, 24. I think I got my years right. So that will take effect. Article 7 is school administration. Those are your principals, the principal's offices. Something I said, Mr. Carey?
No, I was just thinking out loud to myself.
Okay. And then we'll have school committee discussion. And so then we have the 21st. This is tentative. Some of these, as I said, are subject to the council's availability. But we're planning on the 21st with a joint school committee, city council meeting, budget discussion. That's also the night where we do capital improvements, CIP. And you folks will get the CIP presentation before that. That usually starts in December. We're, as you know, transitioning between business managers right now. So CIP is, we'll see how quickly we can get to that when December gets here. Standing in for Mr. Hanson, just for the record, is not fun. Been doing the best we can to limp along. Jackie has been awesome in our business office. So if you have a chance, just send her a note, because she's really helped a lot in the last couple of weeks. So then we get into transportation, operations and maintenance, and school committee discussion. One of the things I want to highlight for you under Article 8 is, anybody notice that gas has gone up in the last month or so? Anybody know what goes into our buses to make them run? Propane. Yeah, we have some on propane. Yes, correct, Mr. Simpson. But we also have a lot of gas. So anticipate that that's a line that's going to go up. Operations and maintenance is 9, and then, of course, we have school committee discussion.
Electric buses are looking really good now.
Well, they are. The problem, an electric bus, Mrs. Hart, will set you back about $300,000 right now. And yeah, and so a plain old gas bus is about 100 in round numbers. So hopefully the state will subsidize that. That's what they're talking about. They asked us if we would like an electric bus courtesy of the state. We said yes, we would. So we'll see if they actually come through with that. So then we have debt. We'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. Article 11 is all other crossing guards, adult ed revenue, and then we do a straw poll for the public hearing. We need, in my office, a number to take to publicize, to get that out for people to think about. So we ask you, or the chair will ask what you can support. And so here are some other key dates. So the 6th of April is a public hearing. We have a tentative budget presentation to the council. Again in April, the city school committee vote on the 4th, council vote on the 16th, and then the budget validation referendum, which sounds like a really far away date, June 14th, will actually come quite quickly. So that's the process that we've set up. It's one that worked well for us last year. It's publicized. The calendar will go on the website, and people can see, as will this presentation, what we're doing. So here's some fixed costs, and these are ones that I want to get on your radar. These are estimates, and I haven't included it here, but I want to get this on your radar. I was at a construction meeting on Monday, and Mark and I were both there. In this budget, we will need to include moving costs to go from the existing EL to the new EL. And so Mark said in his experience, that's about $100,000. So just, it's not an insignificant move. So I need to let you know that may be spread over 2 years. We'll see, because the move happens in July. That's the end of, the beginning of one fiscal year, the end of the other. So that's a big number, and I want to make sure that's on your radar somewhere. So we have negotiated agreements with some folks and not with others. Faith and Brian have been doing rock star work, trying to negotiate contracts and get things settled, and we're up to 4 contracts, Brian, I think?
Yep.
And
4 out of 6.
4 out of 6. And I think I've said this before, but they really have put a considerable amount of time into those contracts. And it's a savings for you, because every hour that they put in is $450 that you save by not paying Drummond Woodson to have to do it. So, and anything that we can do in-house to support them, we've been able to do so far with a real light touch from the legal department. So it's been a lot of work, and we really appreciate your service there. So this is teacher salary and benefits, health I'm going to get to in a little bit. So the 22 budget, which is the year that we're in, $19,457,590. The projected increase is, as you can see, $567,000. This is an estimate. We are about to begin negotiations with the teachers unit, probably in January. We're currently negotiating with the transportation unit. So we've given it our best guess. We'll put what's called a placeholder in the budget. We had to do that with the support unit because we weren't sure at the time of budget negotiations where they would end up. But these are our best guesses. These are general fund only, includes retirement, Medicare, and unemployment. Sometimes you hear me refer to those as roll-ups. It's just a slang term for those three items. Talked about the estimates. And so the Edtech salaries and benefits have been negotiated. They have a 3-year contract, courtesy of Faith and Brian. Current budget is just under $3.4 million. That's the projected increase of $159,621. Same deal with the roll-ups. These are the administrator salary and benefits, $29,000 increase. That is a settled contract negotiated last year. Other staff salary and benefits, we have a number of people, including my office, who are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. These are our estimates for what those costs are, and that's roughly $82,057. And as I said, the transportation unit is not settled yet. And so we are very conservative when it comes to projecting healthcare costs. And this is usually a debate at the school board level, and I've lived this both ways. I've lived with people who have under-budgeted their healthcare costs, and then we get the rates in April, and then you're scrambling in a system like this one for what could be $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 because your rate went up, and you said, well, back in March, let's try to cut that by 5%, and then it's a gamble that I don't like taking. So historically, here in Auburn, we've used 10% as a rate anticipation. We get, as I said, the rate in April, and we have that number usually before we go to the council. So we're able to adjust that figure at the time. But it's much easier to take money out than it is to put money in. So that's that. So this is the biggie, and this is where I think we need to spend a little time discussing this. We are building a new high school, and the citizens of Auburn approved articles to support that new high school with the understanding that they were taking on pretty sizable debt. And so debt service in '22 is $4,174,786, and next year the budget that we're putting together is $7,831,350. Now, I've been asked last year, why do we have to add in both the state share and the local share to the bottom line? And that is because it is that way. You have to do it. You have to add the total cost for that project. It's not, the state doesn't say, well, we're just keeping our books here at the MDOE. Auburn is keeping its books, and that's what we are going to have to budget. So that is a $3,656,564 increase to the school department's budget. So just sort of let that one settle in for a minute. So when people go, what's up? That's what's up. So 23 includes the first partial payment on the high school, and that's of that 4,851,999 is paid by the state. We do get offsetting subsidy. However, the local share, which last year, you may recall, was in the vicinity of about $253,000, if you recall. So this year, it's going to $665,821. So just be prepared for that. If I've done my job correctly, then this isn't new news. But as we go through the budget process, these are figures that, in my estimation, have been approved. The citizens in Auburn voted on this, and this was part of what they anticipated as cost. There was, and this is, I didn't put this in budget achievements because it wasn't related to budget, but the Finance Committee and Councilor Carrier has led that along with Mr. Simpson, decided in June to pay off a sizable debt that we had for a energy performance contract. We had the money to do it. It was huge. It was over $800,000. But we decided that we would take care of our debts, and we did. And that now going forward puts us in a really good position for budgets. We've reduced our payments by $118,000. So that was a really smart move. We also, I think you'll recall, sold our iPads and laptops back, and instead of borrowing money to buy new ones, we took the proceeds and we put it back into those devices. Historically, Auburn has done lease purchases for those sorts of things. So we were lucky, and that was a smart way to manage your money. So that's debt service. So debt service just gets better. So this is the local share, and over the next 10 years, I want to give you a sense of what that looks like. So if you had sticker shock at 665,820, take a look at 23-24 at 1,069,885. And then it'll start to go down. But the next couple of years, as you build up to those $1 million payments, are significant. And this is the local share. This is what the citizens in Auburn were asked, do they want to add in addition to what the state would fund for a new high school. So that's that. This is the state share only. Also some pretty big numbers. We talked about 22-23, that's $4.8 million. Take a look at next year, that's $7,796,520, and then it goes up through 26-27, and as with the local share, then it starts to come down. But I really think this is important for you folks to understand that we've committed to this. This is our debt schedule. The state will give us the subsidy amount, and so when you see a little bit later in the presentation a general purpose aid subsidy line, you got to remember that that looks great, but a big hunk of that is for debt service. Okay? So rolling along. So the ELH debt service, and so the principal plus interest, local bonding is going up 12% and 88% for the state share. And this is what I said a little bit earlier, you have to budget both the expenditure for state and local share for the debt service annually. So we talked about that before. So if you take a look at our fixed costs right now, and this does not include the EL local or state-funded debt. Okay, I want to be clear about that. So if you add up what I anticipate will be the fixed costs for salaries and benefits, we're looking at $1.4 million and change, and that's roughly a 4.5% increase. I'm going to pause for a minute because that does not include the local share for debt. So if you add the local share for debt in, you can add another $600,000 to that number, which puts it up over $2 million. So that's, you just got to be ready for that as you start thinking about the budget and the questions that you're going to get from constituents. But that's where we are. So I want to tell you a little bit about general purpose aid. This is the money that we get from the DOE. Last year, Adam went through a pretty extensive presentation of the EDU 275 or the ED 275, which is what tells us how much we get and where it is. We decided that since you've been there, done that, we didn't need to do that again this year. We are at any time ready to answer questions from members if they have them about the 279 or how that works. So these are our state subsidy numbers. I don't have the number for this year because we usually get that in February. Sometimes it has been the last week in January. I've been around long enough to know I've even seen it come in April. Last year in October, the department sent us preliminary special education subsidy numbers, which were up, which was awesome. It was like over $1 million. But usually it's February. So you'll have them as part of your budget presentation, but not a whole lot of time before. So that's what we had. And when you look at those sizable increases, anybody know why 21, 22 went up as much as it did? It's the high school, exactly. Mrs. Hart, that is the high school, the state portion of the high school. So I want to talk a little bit about fund balance. Fund balance is what we also call the unallocated fund balance. An example is when you decide what you want to take from fund balance as a revenue to help offset or mitigate a tax increase. Last year for 21-22, we used 879,404. The year before that, they used 970. I tend to be pretty conservative when it comes to fund balance. I think it's sort of like a savings account. And if you take out all your money, then the next year you don't have that money to help mitigate a tax impact or salary or positions that you want to keep in. And so we manage that pretty carefully. One of the things that Mark and I have talked about is projecting out for you as part of your budget discussions how to use your fund balance. So we'll tell you probably in December, we'll know, if I'm lucky, how many positions we have left or unfilled. We're still hiring. And that will flow into the fund balance. You may recall that in June last year, after the budget validation referendum had taken place, the state finally released its budget, and that budget was very healthy. And so we were able to receive another, I think it's $1.3 million in general purpose aid. That is going to be part of our fund balance. So we need to be judicious in how we go about using that as a resource. We also have a report that we'll share with you in December called Leavers versus Replacers. That would be exactly as it sounds, the people who left the school department, the people who replaced them, and if there's a difference. And everywhere I've ever been, there's always been a difference in terms of replacement of staff. In a district this size, it's probably about $500,000. It's going to be my best guess. That's the fund balance. So this is the local contribution. I think this is an important slide for you to have a look at because this tells us for the last 4 years the amount that the local contribution has gone up. And so in 1819 it was 0. In 1920 it dropped by $100,000. In 2021 it was 0. And then the year that we're in, it was less than 1%, 0.8. The reason I think it's important to talk about parameters this evening is if you, as you talk, you've already seen the slide that talks about what we know will be fixed costs, right? So those will impact what the local contribution, is going, thanks Pam, is going to be. One of the things that I heard,
One door has to stay open because it's an open meeting.
thank you. So one of the things that I've heard, I heard last year, and I don't know if that will be part of the discussion tonight, is we want a 0 impact to the local contribution. And over time, that can be very difficult for the school department to maintain. You know, if that was the position that you took tonight, as you can see, we'd have to find a way to bridge the gap between a 0 base local contribution and expenditures of $1.4 million. So that's discussion that you need to have. I know I've worked with school committees in the past and they've done that once. I haven't worked with many who have done it now 4 years. That's as far back as I went. It could be longer than that. This could be the 5th year. So that leads us right into parameters, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'd appreciate it if they were softball ones, since Adam's not here, and I will, if I can't answer them, I will get back to you. Pretty reliable that way.
It's not so much a question, but from the council standpoint, what we did last year will be very important going forward because you're going to have 4 new members on the council. Having things explained the way that we did last year made it very easy for the council to understand exactly where the money was going. I think in years past, part of the problem is the opinion was, oh, the school board is just spending money willy-nilly. We don't really see where it's going. last year, it was very specific. We answered all the questions going into it, which I think led to the fact that you got a unanimous support from the budget. It was very well explained, and you're going to have new folks on there. I think that doing it the same way that you did it this last year will be very important to making sure everybody understands exactly what's going on, because you guys did an outstanding job this last year.
Thank you.
I think this budget last year was a lot easier to understand, being one of the newer people on the board. And I appreciated all the transparency that you put into the budget, and to just kind of make it a lot easier for everybody to understand, as far as for us to understand and for the community to understand. So I appreciate that.
Thank
And this
you.
was very good too. Thank you.
The section that we had that Adam had explained to us how the money is explained, and how the state gives us money, I think will be important part of that this coming year, because, again, 4 new people on the council. They weren't here for the last time. Good chance that nobody was looking at the meeting, so they'd have that understanding. And having that explained to them will also make it a little bit easier on them.
Great suggestion, thank you. So parameters, what are your thoughts? So it's important to me, and I'm as transparent as everybody else, that if the school committee is thinking we want a zero-based budget again, then that's an important message, because I know from the get-go, I'm looking for $1.4 million.
Without the teacher contract.
Without a settled teacher contract. That's a projected cost.
I think that going forward, that we've made it about as bare bones as we possibly can. You have, I didn't say that, I shouldn't say that. You guys have made it about as bare bones as you possibly can. Going into this, understanding that these are contractual increases. As you pointed out, these are school costs that the city has agreed to take on for the new high school. I would say that you also need to drive home the fact that as of the meeting yesterday, or the other afternoon, 56 open positions. We have 56 open positions, and Dave and I have talked about this before. If we're not drawing people and we're losing people, that's telling us that our salaries are not high enough. And I didn't think that I would ever say this, but we need to think about increasing our salaries if we're going to at least maintain what we have. If we're going to draw people, then we need to understand that it's going to cost us. Now, that may work itself out in, we talked about class sizes and our offerings of what we were offering. That may have to work itself out in there someplace. But if we're not going to pay people a living wage, or a wage that will be comparable in our area, we are never going to get these teachers in here, or staff personnel. So I think that if we go in with a realistic expectation that, yes, there's going to be increases, there are reasons there's going to be increases, I would, as I told Adam before, presentation. We've been 50 people short every day for the last 2 years. Drive that one home, which lends itself to the fact that nobody is actually doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, because you're covering for her, who's covering for him, who's covering for me, who's covering for him. The jobs are not actually getting done the proper way. So if they expect this to be done in a forthright manner, then they have to understand that that comes with a cost. I think that's getting that message out in front. Let them know how we've been working, how short you've been working, the cost increases that we're looking at. And I think that you're pretty much right on par with where we need to be, if not, I'll say a little bit higher as far as salaries, so that we can actually start drawing people in instead of losing them.
Thank you.
Made it easy for the rest
Yeah,
of you. I said
exactly.
increase, so now all you guys have to say is something
Yeah.
under that.
No, he's right.
I-
I mean,
It's very true.
I mean,
Okay.
we've done a fantastic job for 4 years at, you might as well call it 0% increase for 4 years. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. You know, I do think we need to keep the new school separate. I think even when we give city council that message, it needs to stay separate. You know, while we can say, you know, we'd like to have the increase to be as minimal as possible, you know, obviously, you know, we've got the fixed costs. What I don't want to see is us try to bundle the new high school into those fixed costs and then say, okay, instead of the, you know, 1.4, now you've got to cover the 2 million. No, it's really 1.4. Everybody in the city of Auburn has already agreed to the new high school. That should not, we shouldn't pay the burden because of that. Everybody's agreed to it. So I think that's just something now, by showing the numbers, being clear, transparent to city council with the numbers that you just showed us with, you know, what's coming, letting them absorb that now is going to help, I think, going forward. But yeah, with the, you know, being very clear about the fixed costs, I agree with you, Brian. You know, every time we do a negotiation, that's one of the first things that comes up is, you know, how do we attract talent? How do we keep talent? How do we, you know, go about that? And we're going to have to, you know, start doing that if we want to do that. So.
Nobody's talking, so I'm going to just continue. And I also think that we need to, there's going to be a lot of mention about the fact that we have money now that was not expected. But something we also need to drive home to folks is that a lot of that money is going to be spoken for in trying to get us even to parity where we should be. And that money is very fixed. It's not going to go on for 10 years or 15 years. We're looking at 5 years overall less. So they need to understand that while this is a benefit for us this instant, that's not going to continue on. And as Brian said, making sure that they understand that these are one-time funds that may not, probably not be going on down the road.
Yeah, those funds they're a Band-Aid for now. They're great for now, but yeah, but as eventually the cost will go up. But I fully agree with Brian as far as, you know, just being clear as to what we're spending and how it's a fixed income. Like, these are contracts. These are fixed incomes. This isn't something we negotiate. This has already been negotiated. This is something that is fixed. And I agree, too, with the school. I mean, the city has already agreed to pay the portion of the school, then keeping that separate in a way. Like, I know it has to be all together, but when we discuss it.
No new tax dollars going to it.
No.
We agreed to do this. I mean, that's really not part of a process. It's a done, encumbered agreement.
We can only go so far with 0 increases. We can't grow with that.
Well, we're not growing.
Well, not,
Well,
yeah.
we're not.
Well,
Well,
that's what's lended,
that's-
lended itself to what we have right now.
Right.
Where
And so,
our salaries have really not kept pace with those around us, and we're starting to pay the price now for not having competitive salaries. I think that we're definitely on the right path with where we're wanting to go as far as content and things like that, and looking to where we need to improve, but we have to be able to have those personnel in there to keep pushing us forward. And I think that that's something that you guys will have to discuss as you go forward.
Well, this is really helpful. I will take this information back. Chairperson Pro Tem, is there anything else that? Is your gavel?
Get it ready.
I got one other thing, Brown.
No, I appreciate all the hard work you've done last year to get the budget this year, and the process is what is most impressive to me. That it is you build it, versus approve it, which I think, in a short period of time that I was able to sit up with this council, the first year was approve this. It didn't, I was like, wait, slow down. There's a lot of zeros there. And the way we, last year, and I think the everything in our country and our community is so dynamic, changing. The economy is changing, so it's going to be an interesting thing, and I'll be supporting it from afar for sure. But I thank you very much. It was a really good preparation. Just a second.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Bill. No, I'm just teasing you, buddy. Go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just going to say one other thing, because I happen to turn to this page. One of the things I think we also ought to be very, very clear with the community, with city council, is the goals. I mean, we can't hit a 95% graduation rate if we don't have the backing, financially, administrators, teachers, ed techs. I mean, if we don't spend money, you can't get to that graduation rate. You can't get increased test scores. You can't meet these goals. So I think that's also another clear message is, in order to achieve these audacious goals, here's what has to happen. That also helps to set the message too, I think.
And I think too, as we've also talked about, as we've also talked about too, reaching those goals, you have done things like the curriculum, change the curriculum, the math curriculum, the literature curriculum. You have done things to try to improve the quality of the education that we have here in Auburn. Now, we need to also, like you said, now to reach those goals, you have done your part. Now we need to try to make it so that you can have the talent to achieve those.
I had just one other thing. But it's something that you started with the notifications for the meetings and stuff that I really like, and I hope that you continue on, is the notification to the public. In the last year and a half, since you've been here, we've had more notification to the public about things that are going on in the school department that makes people aware of where we're at, and I think you are spot on with this, and that you need to continue it so that these people understand. In the past, we never knew what the school department was doing. And I'm just paraphrasing stuff that I've heard over the years. We never knew the school department was just off doing their own thing. With you being up front and out front with everything, and the website being where it is, and putting out this information is only going to make it this much easier for people to understand where we're coming from. And I think it's great that we're actually finally getting this information out. You're actually getting the information.
Thank you.
Brian, you're on a roll tonight.
This may be getting my close.
It's your last meeting, he's like on a roll.
Dr. Brown, thank you very much. Is there any
You're
more
welcome.
budget discussion? Any more feedback you need this evening, or
I'm good.
you got it laid out moving forward? The next meetings, it looks like December 1 and 15 at 6 p.m. I would ask if there's future agenda items or requests for information to email Dr. Brown and Karen Matthew. Here it is, my moment. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I heard everybody.
Let Brian do it.
Faith?
Second.
And what's for that? Okay, in favor?
Oh, yeah.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.